Today, we're going to talk about Ravenloft, The Horrors Within. After a long hiatus, D&D is back with a new book. Let's talk about what I really liked in this book. Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft was one of my favorite books in 5th edition. I thought it was incredibly well written, full of really neat tools, a lot of interesting content that if you love a Ravenloft type campaign, this was like a must-have with absolutely great information in it, really nice writing. And so the idea that this book has come back to life, been reanimated with some additions and changes, well, I wanted to know exactly what's changed and what's neat about it and how it compares, and you might as well. So I'm making two videos. In this video, I'm going to give you the positive side of what I really liked and what's new, because I know from a long experience of talking to lots of really cool, great people, different people like different things. And so what I like may not be what you like. So I'm going to focus in this video on what I liked the most about Ravenloft, The Horrors Within. All right, I guess I could have started as a number one, not with the writing, though it is probably what I like the most, but with the hilarity of the double entendre that is the title of this book. Ravenloft, The Horrors Within is a way of saying the horrors inside of Ravenloft, the horrors inside of the book itself, the horrors within ourselves and the various creatures that appear. I kind of like that double, triple play on words. And certainly we're going to find a lot of horror in this book and in all of the things, and maybe reflecting on us, depending on what kind of aspects of this book we like. But the main thing that I would start with that I like is the writing. The writing is really very good. There have been other recent books where I thought the writing was not as strong as it could be, that its voice sort of wavered at times, that it tried to make things sound exciting but didn't kind of know how to land it in a way that I thought that older books really had a better way with words, just better wordsmithing, word crafting, richer, more evocative language that spoke to somebody new, but also to somebody who's been playing and reading forever. So I think this book gets back towards the kind of writing that I like. I found it very enjoyable to read, very imaginative and creative as I went through it. I liked it a lot. I also felt that way about Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, to be clear. That also was really a fantastic book. But the writing is very sharp. There is a lot here that's good. A lot of the things that were written in Van Richten's are more concise now. And I think that for that, I am a wordy guy, shock, surprise. But for that, it's still pretty good. It condenses down to what's often important, even if it doesn't always capture everything and give very little intent behind it all. I think that writing is still really sharp. There's no getting past the second one. Everybody who has seen this book is commenting on it, and it is true. The art is absolutely glorious in this book. Whether it's art of the subclasses that at times almost feel like they're trying to make iconic characters by having a character appear as a subclass, but then in some other piece of art. I like that. I wish there was actually more of that. But this art is just gorgeous. And I was able to meet with members of the D&D team, and they spoke to me and several other folks that have YouTube channels about the approach they took to the art, all of the concepting they did, how they went back. And if you listen to the State of the Game video that was on Dice Cream Sandwich, they talked about how they looked at old original movies as well as new movies that are in the horror genre, and the color palettes that are both used today and in very original Italian cinema, horror cinema, and took those colors. And so we see these contrasts. You can see that in the picture that's on the screen right now. This sort of green in the background. There's a lot of green and purple, and then often an amber or red or something yellowish in that kind of spectrum that sort of plays off of the color palette of green and purple that you'll see throughout this book. And so it's much more unified than when I look at Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. As much as I love that book, and I think it has some, very excellent art. I mean, I just randomly chose a page, and it has, great art, but it doesn't have as unified a purpose to it. My partner in crime, Sean Merwin, and I were talking this week on Mastering Dungeons about Descent into Avernus. Very great, incredible art. One of my favorite books for art. Just amazing. This book is like that. Just the art really sweeps you off your feet. Very compelling. But really important for me to say, we can't judge books by their cover art or their interior art or any art. Art is great. Words are what actually are going to deliver the utility of the book. And so while this art really is amazing, it's the words that matter. It's that writing. It's the utility of it, right? And so I wrote about the writing, but we can also look at things like the utility of the book, the payoff that we get for our hard-earned money, the change and impact it'll have on our games if we use this book or don't, right? Those are the things that ideally we want, or just even to be inspired, right? That when we read this, we will be inspired to use it in some way. Doesn't even have to be in Ravenloft, but you'll say, oh, I read this section and this is really cool. I'm going to put, this as a kingdom in my next campaign, or I'm going to use this dark power as a villain, right? Those kinds of things are just really make the difference in a book like this. My third favorite are the two subclasses because they are so very good and at both a story level and the execution of what they do. Subclasses, there were only two that came in the original Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. It had the Bard's College of Spirits and the Warlock Undead Patron. Those come back here, but we also get the Grave Domain from Xanathar's and a number of other spooky-inspired subclasses. Are the changes substantial? I'll talk about that in my next video, but what I want to focus on is the Hollow Warden for the Ranger is so fun. It's really neat. It has a lot of cool ideas, a lot of ways it expresses itself in the game through play. It makes you very interesting as a character in a way that I think is easy to customize and tweak. So it doesn't just have to be super spooky. It could be just being dark and mysterious or things like that. The way the powers are expressed can certainly fill this horror theme, but it can also apply in other ways. Really find it to be very fun, very neat. The features that you get are things that when I read them, I am really impressed by them, and I want to create that character and play through it. Very, very cool. I also like the design of the Reanimator, which is for the Artificer class. My understanding is that this class is going to be available. If you purchase the book on D&D Beyond, you'll get the class as well. I don't love that digital divide. Wait, it's supposed to say positive. So forget that. Grab your Artificer book at your local gaming store, whether it's the first book or the second book, and you now have the Reanimator subclass in this book. The Reanimator is pretty fun. I don't love it as much as the Ranger class, the Hollow Warden, but I still think it's really neat. And what was really fun is if you watch the Dungeon Master's actual play series, the way that Neil Newborn breathes life into Professor Creme de la Creme, a rock gnome Reanimator artificer, is really cool. There's a lot that you can learn from that. Also, the way that he works with the DM Jasmine Bueller to say, okay, this creature that I met, I want to animate it and sort of promote it, evolve it to being a reanimated version. And so he does that in a couple of different cases, which ends up being really neat, right? Because now the thing that you're reanimating isn't just like a random sort of feels like a class feature, but rather feels like an extension of the world. And I think if you're going to play a Reanimator Artificer, it's worth thinking about that angle and watching what Neil Newborn does in the Dungeon Master's actual play as a sort of template to work out with your DM. Or if you're a DM and someone plays a Reanimator, think through that and maybe watch a couple of those snippets and just get a feel for, oh yeah, I could help the Reanimator in my party have a really great time with that. So both of these subclasses, really nice additions to the game. Found them to be a lot of fun. There is also a new species, the Lupin. You have Dark Vision, your unarmed strikes deal slashing. You can use both damage and shove options once per turn when you hit with your unarmed strikes. You can howl and give disadvantage. You can do that a number of times equal to proficiency bonus. Some interesting things there. As a designer, I find it fascinating the way that sometimes proficiency bonus has been the way to go forward on design, and other times it is not. But yeah, the Lupin is cool. It's not the kind of thing I would play, but if you're looking for this kind of feel in a game, or if you want to represent the fact that maybe your character was bitten and transforms into Lupin, I think this is a neat thing to have in the tool. We already have Damphir and Hexblood from before. But having those again here, it gives you a lot of options for how you could transform your character through play. And again, the Dungeon Master's actual play shows you examples of how people played these and breathed life into all of these to make them interesting in that campaign. We also get 3 new domains. We get Innsmouth, Shadowlands, and Sithicus. Sithicus is the domain of Lord Soth, and we get that in the Dungeon Master's actual play as well, featured there. Obviously, that actual play borrowed heavily from this book. That's part of the point. It's part of the marketing campaign for this. And so that's really cool. There are some that were in Van Richten's that aren't here. But these are all interesting. Innsmouth is famous for Cthulhu. They did not, they took pains to say in one of the videos, they did not try to just bring Massachusetts into D&D, but rather to make it interesting and play off of what it is that has made an Innsmouth type of setting interesting in any number of Call of Cthulhu scenarios or horror movies or anything like that. The Sithicus domain has some really neat areas and Shadowlands as well. So there are 3 reasonable domains. I think every domain is kind of useful when you go towards looking at what you might bring into actual campaigns. The more you have, the more that it's likely. And so having some in Van Richten's that don't appear here, some that are that are new to this book, that's all helpful. We have the other section as well, just as we did in Van Richten's, where they do very short paragraphs on all of the kind of other places. So some of the ones moved to the other section that were in Van Richten's. And I think we have like 26 domains in other, before it was 22. So you get a little more there as well, but they're also just short blurbs that you could use the example of what's fleshed out here in these domains to represent the ones that are in the other section. Let's talk about the positive way to look at how domains compare between Van Richten's and now. So Borca, for example, is a domain that's in both of the previous book and in this version. We get a new map. It's pretty much the same, but with a new art style. We still have the 2 Dark Lords that live in this domain. We have a nice addition here, which is similar if you've seen the Eberron Forge of Artificer book. In Forge of the Artificer, we get suggested campaign arcs that can help us do various types of Eberron campaigns. Really, really useful. I love that approach. It's something that I've been singing the praises of Mike Shea's Lazy DM series, where he will tell you, hey, here's an example campaign you can run, which really helps you understand how to structure a campaign. This does that for this Ravenloft domain, showing you campaign arcs with 2 level bands tying it into an arc. I like that idea a lot. We also get a short adventure for level 5 PCs. We get a situation, a hook, about a half page of encounter concepts. Each encounter idea is roughly a paragraph. So it's more of an outline with 2 likely encounters where stat blocks are suggested for the fights, right? And the story's okay. But you also get some tactical maps. They aren't for this adventure necessarily, but you could use them or apply them to a larger campaign that you're working with. The point of the maps is really to capture a couple important locations or representative locations in the setting, not necessarily the adventure. But those are nice sort of tools that help bring value to each of the domains. I should also add, before going to this next section, there are a lot of things here that existed before that if you're new to this book, well, then this is all upside, right? Like you don't have the old book, and maybe you're not thinking of getting it. Well, then you get everything here. So for example, in Domains of Dread, there is a section on creating Domains of Dread, right? And so that's very helpful. There are all these other subclasses. And so if you don't have them before, well, this is all, you get a bunch of subclasses, and that's really great. And you get backgrounds, and you get dark gifts that can be used as feats. And so all of these things can be really useful. I may not place them as positives in my personal review of this because they already exist, or maybe I like the old versions better. You can watch my other video for that full breakdown. So I haven't kind of gone over everything that's in the book. But it's worth saying that, yes, there are a bunch of subclasses, a bunch of species. I think there's 4 of them. There are 3, I believe, backgrounds. There are a bunch of dark gifts that have been converted over to feats. There are, 13, I think, domains that have been rewritten. There are all these other sections, right? So there is a lot that you're getting here beyond what I'm just kind of quickly talking about. An adventure for every domain section of the main ones. The Bastions section I'll touch on in a bit. information on creating domains of dread, and then let's get to this one that is on my list of positives, which is new monsters. We again get the same advice that Van Richten's had on describing monsters, giving them interesting origins, which I think is really invaluable. Thinking about how to run a monster so it is spooky, it is dread-inducing, it is engaging on a horror level. That's really important feedback. We get 51 monsters in this book versus 32 in Van Richten's. Some come from other sources. And many NPCs that were described in Van Richten's now have a stat block, so some of them come from there. So it's not like you're just getting, plus, 19. It's a little bit less than that. But it's still, you're getting a number of great monsters. You're getting 51 monsters, and a number of those are new or heavily revised from a concept. So that's really cool. The appendix, Van Richten's had the spirit board, and instead here we have the Taroka deck. The Taroka deck is going to be sold separately as it has been before. This one has new art that's very pretty. And I, of course, am drawn to the artifact card because I wrote an adventure for the Adventurers League for the Ravenloft season, which was based all off of the artifact as a domain card. So let's end on number 6. The adventures that are in this book are, I don't know that it's my style, the kind of short outline version, but I am very glad they're here because a lot of DMs do say that they use books like this largely for inspiration. They want to see examples of the kinds of adventures they might create and then create them themselves. And so this format may be very useful. So I'd love to hear actually from you, leave a comment down below. How many of you want more than what's, say, in the Dungeon Master's Guide 2024 that has that sort of half-page adventure approach? We also see that in the Forgotten Realms books that came out, Heroes of Faerun, Adventures in Faerun. We'll see it here in this book as well. And how many of you are really enjoying, do you enjoy this format or not, right? Are you using it? What would make the format more useful? I would be fascinated to hear what people have to say about that. But if you like this format, if it's useful, if having examples is useful, then that's definitely a reason to like The Horrors Within. This is something that didn't exist in the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft book. We also get Bastions, and I always like to see a system in the core books move forward and get support. I miss Downtime, for example, and I always thought it was something that should have been supported more in adventures and source books. So here we see Bastions get some love. I've reviewed both the positive and negative of Bastions in the past, so I'm of split mind on those. But these are, neat for if you like the system, then you get Bastions that are spooky and interested, and your whole Bastion can be haunted. So I think those are some neat concepts that, again, if you like that, then these can be strong selling points for the book. So there you have it. That's what I loved about Ravenloft, The Horrors Within. The book is in early access already, January 2nd. So you can go to your favorite local gaming shop, and if they are a Wizards Play Network partner, then they will have access already. If not, they'll be getting it in 2 weeks. Similarly, you can go onto D&D Beyond and buy it through early access now, though I'm a big fan of paper, but you do you and enjoy. If you want a little more critique, I will give that to you later this week when a video comes out showing where I wish that there had been some improvement. But either way, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy the next one. And I want to thank especially the people of my Patreon who make this possible. When I'm trying to juggle things like Crack the Sun and my own writing creations, you're the fuel that keeps me going and allows me to do all of this. Thank you so very much. And I'll see you next time. In fact, later this week.